have a 1961 D. Lincoln Memorial cent, one of the classic U.S. copper pennies that collectors often appreciate for its history and distinctive design. This coin was minted in Denver, as indicated by the small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse front side. The obverse features the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, a design that has been in use since 1909. Around Lincoln's portrait are the inscriptions "In God We Trust" at the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1961 D to the right. The reverse side of the coin shows the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the wheat ears design starting in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The reverse design was created by Frank Gasparo and includes the inscriptions "United States of America" at the top, "E Pluribus Unum" just above the memorial, and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look closely, you can also see a small seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial, a clever detail that symbolizes Lincoln's enduring presence. The 1961 D penny was struck during a period of high mintage, with over 1.75 billion coins produced at the Denver Mint. This massive production means that most examples are quite common and typically hold nominal value, especially in circulated condition like the one in your photos. In general, a circulated 1961 D penny is worth around 1 to 3 cents, depending on condition. However, uncirculated or mint state coins, especially those graded MS 65 or higher, can fetch anywhere from 50 cents to $5, while pristine examples with full red luster can reach $10 or more from collectors. Proof-like strikes, double die errors, or other minting anomalies such as off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, RPMs, or die cracks can increase value significantly. Some 1961 D pennies show a repunched mint mark where a second D was struck slightly offset, creating a doubling effect. Such varieties, depending on clarity and rarity, can be worth $10 to $50 or more to collectors interested in mint errors. Your coin appears to have circulated wear, as seen by the softening of Lincoln's hair details and the overall brown tone of the copper surface. The even color and mild luster loss are consistent with a coin that has been in use for decades. The coin's reverse also shows moderate wear, especially on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, which are usually one of the first areas to lose definition. Despite this, the lettering remains legible, and the surfaces seem free from major gouges, suggesting it's still in good collectible shape for a circulated example. Because of the copper composition, 95% copper, 5% tin, and zinc, these pennies have intrinsic metal value slightly above face value when copper prices are high, though melting them for metal is illegal in the United States. Historically, this penny represents the early 1960s American era, a time marked by optimism, industrial growth, and the early stages of the space race. The Lincoln Memorial reverse symbolized national unity and Lincoln's enduring legacy, while also modernizing the coinage design to align with mid-century aesthetics. These coins circulated heavily for decades and are still commonly found in change today, though they're becoming less frequent as the U.S. Mint transitioned to copper-plated zinc in 1982. Many collectors today pursue Lincoln cents by year and mint mark, creating penny albums that showcase more than a century of U.S. minting history. The 1961 D fits neatly into the Lincoln Memorial Series, 1959 to 2008, and remains a staple of most beginner and intermediate collections. If you plan to preserve it, store the coin in a dry, acid-free holder or 2x2 flip away from moisture and skin oils that can darken the copper over time. Avoid polishing or cleaning it, as that can remove the natural patina and reduce collector value. For casual collectors, it's an interesting historical piece, while for those studying varieties, it may be worth examining under magnification for possible mint errors. Overall, your 1961 D. Lincoln cent is a modest but meaningful artifact of U.S. history, an everyday object that connects directly to the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, the artistry of mid-20th century American coin design, and the millions of hands through which it may have passed in the 6 decades since it was struck next top. The 1964 United States 1-cent coin, a legacy of Lincoln and American identity. The United States 1-cent coin, more widely known as the penny, holds a unique place in American history and culture. The 1964 edition of this small copper coin may appear modest in value, worth only 1 cent, but it carries with it more than a century of national symbolism, political meaning, and economic history. Minted at a time of significant change in American society, the 1964 Lincoln cent reflects both a continuity of tradition and a moment of quiet transformation in the story of American coinage. Design origins: a tribute to Abraham Lincoln. The design of the 1964 penny originates from the Lincoln cent, which first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Before 1909, U.S. coins rarely featured real people, following an early American tradition of using allegorical figures such as liberty to represent ideals rather than individuals. However, President Theodore Roosevelt believed the nation's coins should be more artistic and reflective of its great leaders. The task of designing the new coin fell to sculptor Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian immigrant who admired Lincoln deeply. Brenner's design featured a right-facing portrait of Lincoln on the obverse front side, showing the 16th president's calm and resolute expression, symbolizing honesty, strength, and moral leadership. Above his head, the motto, "In God We Trust," was inscribed, first introduced on coins during the Civil War era and now firmly entrenched in American numismatic tradition. To Lincoln's left, the word liberty reminded the nation of the value he fought to preserve, and to the right, the date of minting, 1964 in this case, marked its place in history. The reverse side, designed by Brenner as well, depicted 2 wheat ears encircling the words 1 cent and United States of America, symbolizing agricultural prosperity and national unity. However, it's important to note that by 1959, this design had been replaced by a new reverse to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. In that year, the Lincoln Memorial design, created by Frank Gasparo, became the new reverse for the penny, and it is this version that appeared on the 1964 1-cent coin. The Lincoln Memorial Reverse. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side was more than just an architectural image. It was a symbol of reverence and national pride, a monument built in 1922 to honor Lincoln's memory and his role in preserving the Union. The memorial design on the coin was carefully detailed. If one looks closely under magnification, a tiny seated figure of Lincoln can actually be seen inside the memorial, making the 1964 penny one of the few U.S. coins to feature the same person on both sides. Above the image appears the national motto, E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, a phrase that captures the essence of the United States' unity despite its diversity. Beneath the memorial, the denomination 1 cent is boldly displayed, and below that, United States of America encircles the bottom edge. Composition and minting. The 1964 penny was made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition that had been standard since 1864. This gave the coin its warm reddish-brown tone, though over time, circulation and oxidation often turned it darker. It weighed about 3.11 grams and had a diameter of 19 millimeters. The coin's edges were smooth, without reading. The Philadelphia Mint, no mint mark, and the Denver Mint, marked with a D below the date, were responsible for producing the 1964 1-cent coins. Together, they struck billions of these coins, over 2.6 billion from Philadelphia and 3.8 billion from Denver, making it one of the most common U.S. coins ever produced. This was partly due to the coin shortage crisis of the early 1960s, during which the U.S. Mint significantly increased production to meet growing demand for everyday coinage. The 1965 United States 1-cent coin, more commonly known as the Lincoln cent or Lincoln penny, is a small yet iconic piece of American numismatic history, representing over half a century of design continuity, cultural symbolism, and national identity. Struck by the United States Mint, this coin bears the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who is immortalized on its obverse front side. Designed by Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor and engraver, the image of Lincoln first appeared on the penny in 1909, commemorating the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Before this change, No U.S. coin had ever featured a real person's likeness. The Lincoln cent thus marked a profound shift in American coin design, combining artistry, patriotism, and public admiration for one of the nation's greatest leaders. On the obverse of the 1965 penny, Lincoln's right-facing bust is flanked by the inscriptions Liberty on the left and the year 1965 on the right. Above his head appears the national motto, "In God We Trust," first added to coins during the Civil War era and reaffirmed on the Lincoln cent when the design debuted. This phrase reflects the enduring moral and spiritual ethos that many Americans associate with national unity and divine providence, values that Lincoln himself often invoked in his speeches during the turbulent years of the Civil War. On the reverse back side of the 1965 penny is the famous wheat ears design, which had been replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial design. Therefore, the 1965 penny actually carries the Lincoln Memorial reverse, created by Frank Gasparo, who later became chief engraver of the U.S. Mint. The memorial design was introduced to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, symbolizing not only the physical monument in Washington, D.C., but also the enduring memory of Lincoln's principles: freedom, equality, and unity. The image of the Lincoln Memorial is rendered in fine detail, and if viewed under magnification, one can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's seated statue inside the memorial, making this coin one of the few in the world to depict the same person on both sides. The words "United States of America" arc across the top, emphasizing national identity, while the Latin phrase "e pluribus unum," meaning "out of many one," appears above the memorial. This motto, adopted in 1776, captures the essence of the American ideal, a nation formed from diverse colonies and peoples united under one government. Below the memorial, the denomination 1 cent appears in bold letters, making the coin's value unmistakable. Together, these inscriptions serve as both functional identifiers and symbols of American unity, faith, and liberty. The year 1965 holds particular significance in U.S. coinage history. It was a transitional year marked by major changes in the nation's coin production and composition due to a severe coin shortage that struck the American economy in the early 1960s. Rising silver prices and increased demand for coinage had caused widespread hoarding of coins, especially silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars. To address this, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters and reduced it in half dollars. While the penny was not directly affected by silver content, it had long been made primarily of copper. The production policies surrounding all U.S. coins were temporarily altered. One of the most visible changes was the suspension of mint marks from 1965 through 1967. This means that pennies struck in 1965 bear no mint mark, regardless of whether they were made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. The removal of mint marks was intended to discourage collectors from hoarding coins based on mint origin, allowing the mint to focus on circulating enough coinage to meet national demand. The 1965 Lincoln cent was composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition that had been standard since 1864. Each coin weighs 3.11 grams and measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, with a smooth, plain edge. Although the copper color of newly minted pennies is bright and lustrous, over time the surface darkens and develops shades of brown or red due to natural oxidation. Collectors often describe these color variations using terms like red, red-brown, or brown to indicate the degree of toning and preservation. The 1965 issue was produced in massive quantities, with hundreds of millions of examples struck, ensuring that it remains common today in circulation and of relatively low monetary value. However, it holds great historical and sentimental value, representing a period of transition and modernization in U.S. minting practices. Interestingly, number 1965 pennies were struck as proofs. The mint temporarily ceased proof set production next top. The United States 1 cent coin of 1967, commonly known as the Lincoln cent or Lincoln penny, is one of the most recognizable coins in American history. It carries immense historical significance, artistic value, and cultural symbolism that ties deeply to the identity and history of the United States itself. At first glance, the coin displays familiar words: United States of America, 1 cent, In God We Trust, and Liberty. However, beneath these simple engravings lies a rich story of design evolution, political symbolism, economic conditions, and national pride. To begin, the 1967 Lincoln cent was part of a long-running coin series that started in 1909, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Lincoln was chosen to appear on the coin as a tribute to his leadership during one of America's most defining eras, the Civil War, and for his enduring legacy as the preserver of the Union and the emancipator of enslaved people. His image marked the first time a real historical figure was placed on a regular circulating U.S. coin. Prior to 1909, American coins featured symbolic figures like Liberty, representing ideals rather than individuals. The obverse side, the heads side, of the 1967 penny bears the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor and engraver. Brenner's design was based on a photograph of Lincoln taken by Matthew Brady, a famous Civil War-era photographer. The design first appeared in 1909, and by 1967, it had already become an American icon, a design that most citizens recognized instantly. The words, "In God We Trust," arc across the top of Lincoln's head, a motto that had become standard on American coins since the mid-19th century and was made mandatory by law in 1956 as the official motto of the United States. To the left of Lincoln's portrait is the word Liberty, a reminder of one of America's founding ideals. To the right of the portrait appears the date, 1967, indicating the year of minting. An important detail about the 1967 penny is that it carries no mint mark. In other words, unlike most modern U.S. coins, it does not indicate whether it was made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. This absence was not an accident. In 1965, the United States Mint temporarily removed mint marks from all coins in an effort to discourage the hoarding of coins by collectors during a period of nationwide coin shortages. This policy remained in place for coins dated 1965, 1966, and 1967. As a result, all 1967 1-cent coins appear identical in this respect, even though they were actually struck at multiple mint facilities. The reverse side, the tails side, of the 1967 cent features the Lincoln Memorial design, created by Frank Gasparo, who later became the chief engraver of the United States Mint. This design replaced the original wheat ears, reverse that had adorned the penny from 1909 through 1958. The Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, shows the monument in Washington, D.C., as seen from the front. The inscription, United States of America, appears in an arc across the top of the coin, while the denomination 1 cent appears at the bottom. Between these inscriptions lies the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. A phrase symbolizing the unity of the states forming one nation. A fascinating feature of Gasparo's design is that if you look closely with a magnifying glass, you can actually see a tiny representation of the statue of Abraham Lincoln seated inside the memorial, just as it appears in real life. This detail made the 1967 penny particularly symbolic. Lincoln is shown on both sides of the coin, something no other U.S. coin had ever done before. It represents both his human likeness and the national monument built in his honor. In terms of composition, the 1967 penny was made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, consistent with most Lincoln cents minted from 1909 until 1982. The coin weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter. Its reddish-brown appearance comes from its high copper content, which gives it a distinct color and shine when freshly minted. Over time, exposure to air and moisture can cause oxidation, turning the coin's surface from bright red to darker brown or even greenish hues, a natural patina that many collectors find aesthetically appealing. The mintage numbers for 1967 were extremely high. The U.S. Mint produced over 3 billion Lincoln cents that year, a reflection of the large demand for circulating coinage in the booming American economy of the 1960s. Because of this massive production, most 1967 pennies are considered common coins today, with modest numismatic value unless they are in pristine, uncirculated, or proof condition. Proof coins, those struck with specially polished dies and blanks for collectors, were made in next top.